it's an internal attack, happened in the US, okay? If we click on the attack itself, it's around 245 gig of traffic. It's a volumetric attack and lasted for 8 hours. So you can open this website, you can have more information, you can just walk through it. So another thing that I need to show you, I do have here a live system implemented. I have traffic already running on the system. I have here a list of attacks detected by this solution. I search on amplification attacks. I open one of them. So this is one of the amplification attack going to a specific host. It's like a service. So it says, okay, I'm gonna open this one. This is 5.7 gig attack. 5.7 gig attack going to this specific destination. The type of the attack is IP amplification, IP fragmentation, and TP amplification attack. If you click on this one, you will get these details. So I need to show you a few things here. It's some kind of a multi-vector attack because we have, the UDP is used, we have NTP amplification, we have IP fragmentation, we have ICMP, we have DNS amplification. So the attacker here is trying to generate an attack using multiple of protocols, multiple of services. If you look at the characterization of this attack, you will find the source IP address highly distributed. That means this attack comes from a botnet, multiple of sources. Destination IP address is just only a single IP address, is /32. And the protocol used UDP, and all the information. As you can see, the source UDP port is 123, is an amplification attack, NTP amplification attack. The packet size here, you can look at the packet size if you would like. If you go down, you will see the top interfaces in the network that received such type of attack. If you need to have more details, traffic details, you will see the source IP addresses as well, okay? Yeah, it is highly distributed, but it can be detected, of course. If you go down, you will see the source TCP ports. There's no TCP ports here in this attack, it's just only UDP. If you look at this, we have NTP, we have a domain. And the NTP is the mostly used one in this type of attack. Source countries, the attack comes from these countries, the top countries here, protocols, ICMP attack, and other details. So this is how the amplification reflection attack looks like. So this is the end. I guess I don't have more time. It's just only I consumed the 30 minutes. So if you have any quick question, I'm ready to answer. Any question? Yes.
Thank you, Khaled. Question here.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm Ali Rufai from SCIS company in Iraq, Ministry of Communication. Please, can you show the growth?
Yeah.
The growth diagram.
Yeah, I will show it to you. So this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can see in 2010 is 100 gigabyte.
Yes.
And in 2011, 60.
Yes.
What's happened in this period? Why?
Well, it's a good question. Well, to be honest, I will not be able to answer this one because no one can predict the attack, okay? So what happened, in this diagram, we see the largest attack that have been seen in that year, okay? This is just only reflecting the largest attack. So in 2011, the largest one was 60 gig, but how many attacks happened in that year? Could be more than the 2010. Could be, let's say, we had here thousands of attacks, but in 2010, we might have just only hundreds of attacks. So this diagram shows the largest number of attacks only, not the number of attacks happened in that year. So what happened, why the largest attack was 60 gig? I don't know,
okay,
to be honest with you.
Thank you.
We have another. Thank you. Coverage by RIPE-NCC, may I ask a question by show of hands? Tell me how many of you are in charge of running a network? Okay. And may I have another question? How many of you run BCP38 or implement BCP38 in your network? Okay, only one or two. So I just wanted to bring that up. As you mentioned, many of these amplification attacks or attacks based on UDP or things like that is because people can spoof addresses in your network. And implementing BCP38 in most cases is super simple, doesn't need any special equipment, just some configuration. But please, it's an open document as well, BCP38, there are a lot of websites dedicated to that. IXPs has done a lot of work on that. So if you're in charge of a network, please consider implementing BCP38, which is a very important recommendation. If everyone does that, then many of these type of attacks will disappear. I'm sure other types will still come, but this type of the attacks will disappear. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for bringing this point. This is really important because from the analysis of the amplification reflection attack, the spoofing is an initial part here. So the attacker is going to spoof the IP address. So if you follow the BCP, so you will prevent the spoofing on the edge of the network. That means you are limiting of number of the amplification reflection attack because we are eliminating the possibility for the attacker to spoof the IP addresses. Thanks for bringing this. Thank you. Any other question?
Have Nishad, please.
Yeah.
I'm Nishal from Packet Clearinghouse. Thank you for the statistics. The first point I was going to make was taken by Javier, so clearly we were thinking alike. But the other point that I wanted to make was I was a bit disappointed you didn't explain to perhaps some of the operators in the audience some of the things that they could be doing in addition to BCP38 to protect themselves against things like amplification attacks, particularly around the NTP and DNS space. So if you're an operator in the audience and you're wondering, am I vulnerable to this? There are two really, really good community projects that are run called opendnsproject.com, I think, and opentpproject.org. I don't run them, but I help to contribute data to some of them. And if you're an operator and if you're wondering if you're vulnerable or if you can do something to protect your networks from being abused in this sense, then those are two really good resources to go and look up. And again, they'll help you to get an external view on your network and or what if there's anything bad in your network.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I wish if I had some time to talk about the best practices about securing your network and preventing such type of attacks, but unfortunately we had just only 30 minutes. Maybe in the next events we can include some workshops talking about the best practices, what you need to do in your network to protect yourself from such type of attacks. Any other question? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Now, let me invite Mr. Christoph Dietzel from DE-CIX to talk about blackholing at IXPs.
Okay, thanks for introducing me. As you already said, my name is Chris. I'm from the DE-CIX R&D department, and I want to talk about blackholing at IXPs to give you a notion what you could do if you're a member of an IXP that offers a blackholing service, how this service works. And beyond that, I'd like to point out how it is used in the wild. So let me first introduce what blackholing is, or what a black hole is. Here I first gonna stuck a bit on the physics. So a black hole in its original terminology is a geometrical defined region of space-time exhibiting such strong gravitational effects that nothing, including particles and electromagnetic radiation such as light, can't escape from inside. Okay, that's the black hole. That's a bit far off. That's not exactly what we're building at DE-CIX, but what we want to do is we want to build something that keeps packets and protects you from too large traffic volumes. So blackholing as such, also known as remote triggering blackholing, in the previous presentation we got it already mentioned. And it's an operational technique to counter DDoS attacks. And this mitigation feature actually is there as a last resort. So you would probably not go for each DDoS attack you may suffer from, but if you really have your network or your peering link at an IXP at risk, then you have to go for the less evil thing or the less bad thing to your network, and in order to protect it, you need to black hole, or you can black hole certain IP addresses or prefixes. Actually, blackholing is not really something very new. In the ISP area, it's been around for decades or even 2 decades. And since a few years, also IXPs are involved in this and implemented this feature. So let me briefly introduce blackholing, how it works at an IXP. So as we can see here, we have an ASD which announce certain prefix or certain prefixes, or let's say a /24 prefix to all other customers at the IXP. Unfortunately, there are 2 ASs that are used by attackers to send huge traffic volumes to the ASD. This is a very bad situation for the particular AS, since the ports, or let's say even the data center gets or suffers from congestions, customers may complain, or other networks are affected also. To resolve this situation, the ASD can now use the blackholing service as offered at DE-CIX. So therefore, they can simply announce the attack prefix out of the just mentioned /24. So you would probably go for a more specific. In this case, let's just assume it's a single host, so we could just announce /32 prefix for blackholing. This means you also announce the more specific, the /32, but only to the 2 customers from which you get the DDoS attack. And how our platform is recognized that this is an announcement meant for blackholing is we have a different, distinct next hop IP address. And as soon as you set the next hop IP to the blackholing IP, we know that those packets are should be discarded. So as soon as the other 2 networks accept the new blackholing announcement from ASD, we see that the traffic is discarded at the DE-CIX platform. The good part of the story here is that you don't have to do that for all other customers. So the prefix is still reachable from, let's say, the majority of customers at the IXP, and only the ones from which you really get huge amounts of data or DDoS traffic are discarded. So it's a very selective tool, and this selection can be done by using BGP communities. So it can either include like blacklist or whitelist certain ASs. So now we understand the basic working of blackholing. I'd like to just give you the development in this area over the past 30 years. First, blackholing has been used on a per device basis, so single devices were configured to drop certain packets. You can imagine this as an ACL configuration or something like that. First standardization started 2002 with the RFC 3882, and there was a measure proposed where you can centralize this process and manage it from a central position within your network. Around 2005, 2007, so there are hardly to find those exact numbers, but there are some material on the internet. Most major, so to say, large ISP offer blackholing as a service to their customers, but those are merely or solely upstream providers. In 2009, there was an extended community concept to enable more fine granular steering of blackholing, and from 2010 on, the first IXPs adopted this concept. So, given all the information we got so far, we know how blackholing works. We as DE-CIX certainly know how it works, but we offer this service for, let's say, 3-4 years now, and actually we at this point where we want to know, is it frequently used or is it used, and how is it used, and does it really help our customers? So, and then if it's used, what's the impact on the traffic? Does it help? To which degree does it help? And the most important for me as one of the R&D department guys is how can we improve this feature, and how can we help you with your pains? So therefore, we performed a measurement study. We collected all blackholing announcements at our platform over a 3-month period and analyzed those data in order to get some ground truth. Yeah, what we can see here is we've taken all the 33,000 blackholing announcements we got so far in this 3-month period and clustered those by the prefix length. So we clearly see that in most cases only /32 announcements for blackholing were made. Please note that this is a log scale, so we just have 97% /32 announcements. The other class for the less specifics, 24 to /31, account for, let's say, about 3%, and we only got 9 announcements for /24 and less specific. So the first takeaway here is blackholing is certainly used. It's heavily used. I mean, we have 33,000 announcements, but it's mostly /32. The issue that comes in here is not everyone is accepting /32 announcements at IXPs. So accept more specifics for blackholing. It doesn't mean that you need to accept /32 in general to get your routing tables exploding, but you should really think about enable this feature because you help to protect also others. The next step in the analysis is to see, okay, how many active announcements can we observe over time, and is it really a risk for our routing information bases to extend those tables by far? And if we have a look at this plot, we can see that there's a stable number of active black holes. It's the dotted lines. The light blue dotted dashed line is the /32 announcements, and the red line, dashed line, is the other announcements, all other prefixes. So what we see, we got, let's say, around 1,100 announcements at any time, which means 1,100 prefixes. extra if you are a customer of DE-CIX. What we can also observe is we have a high variance in new announcements. So it's not that we have a very stable number every day. This is somewhat expected. If we talk about DDoS attacks, of course, spiky behavior comes from DDoS attacks that don't occur on a regular basis, and operators have to react to it. And what we also see that the less specific prefixes are way more spiky, and especially in late January, we got a really huge spike and could observe that there was a really huge DDoS attack to one of the members. So by having a look at this plot, just to recap, we know it is used over time. We got a fair number of 1,100, 1,200 announcements at any time at DE-CIX for blackholing, and we don't have to be afraid that it's too many announcements, too many additional prefixes. So to proceed the analysis, we focused on, okay, it's cool to know how many announcements we see, but the question actually, which is way more interesting, is how long is such a blackholing present at DE-CIX? Does it last for 5 minutes, for hours, for days? What's the average time span? And what we can clearly see is that most announcements are rather short-lived. So here again, I've clustered all the announcements by prefix length, and we see that the /32 by far are the ones that have the largest fraction, but also they are the ones that are mostly short-lived. Surprisingly, on the other hand, we really got announcements that were really long-lived. Like the longest observed announcement, for instance, was over a period of 76 days, which is quite long. After looking into really the details of such announcement, we face an issue which is more a general issue, because we don't have any ground truth on that. We just see what the customer announces, and we cannot really verify for what reason this is. I even tried to contact the operators. They did not respond. So I'm lost here, and if you can provide me with some more information on that, like why would you constantly announce /32 prefix for such a long period? Or what we also saw is like a /22 prefix for a duration of 55 days, which is quite long for such a huge prefix. What was going on there? Because as soon as the blackholing is switched on, they don't get any insights into how much traffic volume is blackholed actually. So the attack might be over since a while and they're just not aware of it. Or did they forget it? Do they need operational procedures, or do they need any more insights into what's going on? How can DE-CIX support this activity? So if you got any information on this, please come back to me. So to infer the impact on traffic, we had a look in several DDoS attacks, or let's say events where we observed a lot of announcements for blackholing, and then we started to look not solely on the control plane, what we did for now. All plots I've showed to you by now are control plane views. We switched to the data plane to see really, okay, there was an announcement, a BGP announcement, and what happened on the data plane. And therefore, I chose one /32 that received at the peak of this attack 17.6 gigabits per second, just one /32 prefix. And exactly this prefix, as we can see at the plot, the vertical dotted line is the announcement of blackholing, and we can see that the traffic spikes up right before. Then obviously the operators reacted on this and announced exactly this prefix, this /32, for blackholing. And we see that right again, the traffic volumes drop again by about 1/3. We got the 4 lines here. The green line is the overall traffic received by the /32. And we see the blue line down there. This is the traffic that ends up in the blackholing. And the yellow line above indicates the traffic that still gets through to the /32. The point here is that if not, what I mentioned earlier, if not everyone is accepting a /32, we're running into trouble that let's say a relevant part of this attack gets dropped and gets mitigated, but not all of it. We see that roughly 50% of the traffic volume still gets through. This is still a very huge benefit for the customer, obviously, since they reduced it by 50%, but they could also reduce it to 0% if anyone would accept a /32 announcement for blackholing. If the time goes on, we see ups and downs, some more spikes, but this is like daily usage patterns, and over time the traffic that gets through converges to the black hole traffic, and over the course of another couple of days the tag goes down to 0 again. So just to see what kind of unusual traffic this is, we further looked into the port mix of this attack. Not sure yet if it's attack, but if we look at this plot, we are quite sure that this is a DDoS attack. This is the port mix. If we focus on the time where the attack in the previous plot started, we see clearly that the port mix from an average port mix you will all see similarly in your networks, like most of the traffic is other ports, like a mix of very different ports. You have mostly port 80, some port 443, and then some others. And then when the attack begins, you see spiking up an arbitrary port. In this case, it's 1194, which is dedicated to OpenVPN, whatsoever they did with this port or which service they attacked. And we see that the share increases up to 50%. So we really see an unexpected pattern, which gives us some ground truth that really the operators fought a DDoS attack here and used blackholing for DDoS mitigation. And then again, we see that this high share of up to 50% of port 1194 decreases again over time as the blackholing takes effect and the attack slows down. So just a quick word on the standardization of triggering for blackholing. I just want to let you know that we are aware of that it might be challenging for operators to use blackholing at ISP A, at ISP B. They have different communities, they have different operational requirements to use it. The IXPs come with a different solution, like the next hop solution I just introduced to you, and that this might be a pain for you from an operational perspective. That's why DE-CIX is involved in IETF standardization. What we pushing is we want to have a well-defined community for triggering blackholing so that you can just announce a prefix and you can announce it to your upstreams, to your peers, at the IXP, to the route server, whatsoever. It's going to be all the same community, and it will work everywhere in the same way. So that's why we pushing an internet draft, or we have a first version of an internet draft, and we're confident to push it through IETF to become an RFC, or to become RFC status this year. If you want to have any more information, insights on this, I added also the link there, so you can look it up, and if you got questions or it's not too late for improvements of the draft yet. So let me conclude with a summary and an outlook. As I mentioned,